Welcome dear students, hope you are fine. Our today's topic for discussion is figures of speech. Dear students, language can be used in two ways, literally and figuratively. Literal language is direct and uses the real definition and meaning of words and phrases. But when we talk figuratively, the meaning of any word phrase will depend on the context in which they are used. A figure of speech relies on such figurative language and rhetoric. When using figures of speech, the words will diverge from their literal meaning to give a more stylized and specialized meaning to these words. Let's take, for example, the phrase "fast like lighting." Fast like lighting. This phrase merely implies great speed. It does not mean literally as fast as lighting. Now another example, on hearing the school bell, the kids ran out of the class as fast as lighting. Now types of figures of speech. Dear students, now there are dozens of types of figures of speech, but here we will be focusing on the five main ones which we use in our daily prose. Now first is simile. A simile is a figure of speech. A simile is a figure of speech that uses comparison. In a simile, we use two specific words, like and as. In simile, we use two specific words, like and as, to compare two unlike things. In a simile, we use two specific words, like and as, to compare two unlikely things that actually have nothing in common. This is done to bring out the dramatic nature of the prose and invoke vivid images and comparisons. It is one of the most common forms of figure of speech and is used in everything from day-to-day talk to poems. Let us see some examples of simile. He is as brave as lion. He is as brave as lion. Here we will notice a boy and his bravery are being compared to a lion. This is an unusual and illogical comparison, but it brings out the vivid imagery and lyrical quality in the sentence. The little sentence would have read, "He is brave." The little sentence would have read, "He is brave," but using the simile makes it sound much better. Other such examples can be quite like a mouse, as tall as mountain, as tall as mountain, as strong as an ox. These are examples of simile. As strong as an ox, precious like an angel, as cute as kitten, as light as a feather, as blind as a bat, as bold as brass, as bright as a button, as shiny as a new pin, as cold as ice. These are examples. As cool as a cucumber, as hard as nails, as hot as hell, as tall as a giraffe, as tough as nails, as white as a ghost, as sweet as sugar, as black as coal. This was simile. Now metaphor. Dear students, a metaphor and simile are quite similar actually. A metaphor also compares two things that are in no way similar. It does so to bring out the symbolism. A metaphor is a word or phrase used to show its similarity to another thing. It helps to explain an idea. But if we take a metaphor as it is at its literal meaning, it will sound absurd. But if we take a metaphor at its literal meaning, it will sound absurd. An example of metaphor is Alex is a chicken. Literally, this sounds so very absurd. But this is a metaphor which suggests that Alex is a coward. Alex is a coward or frightened. It compares or implies that Alex is a chicken to bring out the symbolism. Some other examples are all the world is stage. All the world is a stage. All the world is a stage. That technology is a dinosaur, etc. Dear students, when a simile and metaphor seems to be very similar, when a simile and metaphor seems to be very similar, here, while a simile and metaphor seems to be similar, there is one basic difference between the two. There is one basic difference between the two. While a simile, here students, a simile and a metaphor seems to be very similar, but there is one basic difference between the two. In a simile, the comparison happens with the help of the word as and like. A metaphor will not have either of those two words, right? There is one basic difference between the two. In a simile, the comparison happens with the help of the words as and like. A metaphor will not have either of those two words, right? This is a big difference which makes the difference between metaphor and simile. Now the examples of metaphor. The classroom was a zoo. Mary's eyes were fireflies. The computers at school are old dinosaurs. He's a night owl. Maria is a chicken. The wind was a howling wolf. The wind was a howling wolf. The falling snowflakes are dancers. The calm lake was a mirror. You are my sunshine. The moon is a white balloon. His tears were a river flowing down his cheeks. His tears were a river flowing down his cheeks. These are examples of metaphor. The road ahead was a ribbon stretching across the desert. Now personification. Dear students, another interesting figure of speech is personification. In this, we personify or represent a non-human entity as human. We give an inanimate object or an intangible idea of some human qualities such as emotions or gestures or even speech. This is done to portray the object as alive and help the listeners or readers paint a vivid picture. Again, if we take the words at their literal meaning, they will sound absurd. Example: the wind howled as the storm grew stronger. Here we have taken an object, the wind, and personified it as a living thing by claiming it howled. Other such examples could be time ran away from him. Time ran away from him. The boat danced in the puddle. The boat danced in the puddle. The car died in the middle of the road. The car died in the middle of the road. Now another example is lighting danced across the sky. Lighting danced across the sky. The wind howled in the night. The car complained as the key was roughly turned in its ignition. The car complained as the key was roughly turned in its ignition. My alarm clock yells at me to get out of bed every morning. The avalanche devoured anything standing in its way. The avalanche devoured anything standing in its way. The door protested as it opened slowly. My house is a friend who protects me. My house is a friend who protects me. The moon played hide and seek with the clouds. These are the examples of personification. The approaching car's headlights twinkled at me. The stairs groaned as we walked on them. Our vacuum hums a happy tune while it cleans. So this was personification. Now hyperbole. Hyperbole in the Greek language translates to excess, and that is what it does. It exaggerates. We use the hyperbole to emphasize the importance or overstate something. These exaggerated claims and statements are never meant to be taken at their literal meaning. They are used to create a strong and lasting impression. An example would be, since he has been away from home, he has gotten as thin as toothpick. So, since he has example, since he has been away from home, he has gotten as thin as toothpick. Obviously, he has not gotten as thin as toothpick. We only exaggerate to emphasize on how thin he has become. Some other examples are, those shoes cost a king's ransom. For the millionth time, clean the kitchen. His grandfather is older than the hills. These are examples of hyperbole. Now another example is, I have a million things to do today. I have a million things to do today. When I was young, I had to walk 15 miles to school uphill in the snow. I had a ton of work. Hyperbole. We are speaking about the examples of hyperbole. If I cannot buy that perfect prom dress, I will die. If I can't buy that perfect prom dress, I will die. He's as skinny as a toothpick. He's as skinny as a toothpick. The car went faster than the speed of light. Now there are some examples of hyperbole in advertising which are included in advertising. Let us observe these. Adds amazing luster for infinite mirror-like shine. Mirror-like shine. Brilliant to Bronite shampoo. It doesn't get better than this. Oscar Mayer. The best a man can get. Gillette. So these were the examples of hyperbole. Now fifth one is onomatopoeia. This is a figure of speech where words or phrases indicate sounds, often to bring out more imagery and better describe a thing. Authors use words to involve all five of our senses. Onomatopoeia refers to those words that imitate the sounds of an object or person. For example, the bees buzzed around in the garden. Onomatopoeia refers to those words that imitate the sounds of an object or person. The bees buzzed around in the garden. Here the word buzzed is indicating the sound coming from the bees. Right? Some other examples are, leaves were rustling. Leaves were rustling. This rustling is the sound of the leaves. The door was squeaking. So this is squeaking. This is the sound of door. He closes the book with a thud. So this is again the sound. The buzzing bee. Now the example is: the buzzing bee flew away. The sack fell into the river with a splash. The sack fell into the river with a splash. The book fell on the table with a loud thump. He looked at the roaring. He looked at the roaring. The rustling the rustling leaves kept me awake. The different sounds of animals are also considered as examples of onomatopoeia. We will recognize the following sounds easily: meow, moo, nee, tweet, oink, ba. थैंक यू वेरी मच, आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.